Let's be brutally honest right now. That's a big question.
I'm looking for someone who doesn't want to go to base camp, but they want to go to the very top.
Whether it's here, India, New York.
Civilization was born at happy hour.
That's what wins. That's what stands out. That's what people are interested in. That's what I want to know. The Hospopreneurs Podcast with James Henderson.
Hello and welcome to episode 138 of the Hospopreneurs Podcast. Emma Coath is the Managing Director of Rocket Seeder Limited in Australia and a co-founder and director of Grow AgriFood Tech Accelerator in Singapore. She's driven to build a sustainable food system through supporting innovative entrepreneurs. Emma has worked in the food and agriculture sectors for the past 25 years in both public and private organisations and has completed a Bachelor of Commerce, Master of eBusiness, and is a member of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. So that we can keep the lights on as a company, I'd like to share with you, it's called Access Collins. They're the only fully integrated end-to-end system on the market for comprehensive booking and event management. Their platform is helping operators increase foot traffic, maximise revenue, tackle no-shows, and save many hours each week through automation. Find out more at bit.ly/hospo-sponsor. Hello and welcome to the show, Emma.
Thank you for having me, James.
It's an absolute pleasure. I am looking forward to having you on the program today. But as you know, the first question that I like to ask on every interview is a crazy hospitality story or exceptional hospitality experience. So I'd love to hear your story.
Yeah, okay. It may not sound that crazy, but it actually was a bit crazy. The way that I got into the food sector was actually through hospitality. And after I finished my commerce degree, I was only 20. I'd been doing the usual working in hospo. And then I wanted to get into sort of something to do with international business and found myself working for a food export company. And clients were five-star hotels and resorts, mostly across Asia. And most of our customers were executive chefs in those hotels and resorts, often European, occasionally Australian or Kiwi. Doesn't sound crazy, but was a really crazy experience in terms of exporting food. Is pretty challenging to do. And most of it was going out via air freight and very sort of time-sensitive, cool chain, and dealing with executive chefs in hotels and resorts in Asia was interesting at times. It was just a pretty crazy experience for me, but really awesome in terms of I learnt so much early on in my career about the food system, and that's what really got me started. So that was about 25 years ago.
So we'll get into how that moved you towards what it is that you do now in just a minute. But I'd like to hear a little bit more on that. So when you say a crazy story there, or that it was an exceptional experience that has inspired you to do what you do now, do you have any standout situations within that experience that you can draw on that really did stand out to make you do what it is that you do now?
Yeah, I guess it was not one particular story, but I guess what it was learning the importance of suppliers. And I think a lot of people in hospitality, particularly kitchens, in chefing type roles, understand the importance of your supplier or suppliers, and in terms of the relationship that you have with them and also their dedication to quality and service. So you sort of naturally think it's all about the customer, which obviously your customer is very important and customer service is important in that business. Really, you're only as good as your suppliers, and I'm sure that most chefs would say the same thing. And that really led me into getting involved in the food industry and more sort of understanding where food comes from. So I guess the on-farm sort of side, it's more about that upstream part of the supply chain, and that's something that I chose to explore.
Working with such high-end chefs at these hotels, was there anything that you saw that they did differently that most operators didn't do, or what is it that you took away from them?
Yeah, I think the difference, not that I knew a lot of chefs in Australia, just really through my work in guest services and waiting tables and stuff like that during university and some people that I knew, but I think the difference between the chefs that we were supplying to was that they were largely from Europe, or as I said, maybe Australia or New Zealand or even the US, Canada, but they were in Asia. So they had a really global mindset. And I think that was really obvious in the types of, food that they sourced, if you like. And given that their clients were largely international as well, they had to source food that was interesting, like really, and this is sort of 25 years ago, keep things different, do something different every month on the menu, just to keep things interesting for their clientele. But really, they had the whole world to source from, because it's sort of like, or they still are in Asia, and they could source really easily from Europe or from us, from Australia, New Zealand. So it was sort of like, their menu was global in terms of the source of where their product came from. And there were certain things, because they were high-end hotels and resorts, particularly in the Maldives, and they, I guess, had a fairly decent budget to source product.
Taking things closer to today, or maybe it was the same back then, but I'm interested in why you do what you do, or what's really sitting behind the things that you've created since, and were they the same then, and how have they evolved since that experience?
Yeah, look, that was, as I said, my sort of entree really into the food industry. And since then, I went on to do a Master of E-commerce, which sort of morphed into a thesis around regional agribusiness clusters, which have become the flavour of the day at the moment. And this was 20 years ago. And that sort of exposed me to the community structures in regional areas that support the food and agriculture industries. And that led me to getting a role in the Victorian government, which is now Agriculture Victoria, and then different level of exposure in an organisation like that, full of some awesome, really smart, talented people, scientists from all different areas, microbiologists, animal health scientists, social scientists, soil scientists, anything you can really think of to do with agriculture. So it was all really much world best practice, and just working amongst these people was an amazing experience, and I learnt so much about that. Still focused on exporting food to Asia. In fact, I got a scholarship to do a PhD on that topic, which I haven't quite finished, but let's not talk about that. But then what I'm doing now, I see it as an extension of that, and where I started 25 years ago. And really it's around exporting knowledge in terms of ag tech and food. And really that's my end goal. And the end goal for Rocket Seeder is to really support the development of and the commercialisation of science and IP and the commercialisation of ag tech and food tech essentially.
So what is it particularly about ag tech and food tech that has really inspired you, and why did you focus on that? Was it just this experience in food initially, or were you originally fascinated in the concept of exporting food and then became interested in the food supply chain? I'm asking this because I'm interested to know why it's food. Why are you interested in that?
Food is, one of the most important things in the world because we're all reliant on it, along with water, I guess. And so everybody around the world needs to eat it, but also more and more we realise the environmental impact that food production has on the earth and the effect on climate. And there's a little bit of why are we exporting food around the world. There's a bit of that in the back of my mind, but really my experience also in working for the Victorian government and surrounded by all of that knowledge is that I saw the opportunity, the business opportunity for that. And we really have not scratched the surface in Australia in terms of the commercialisation of that knowledge. Often it goes offshore, it just stays in universities, in CSIRO, or at state government departments as well, and doesn't go anywhere, like with tens of thousands of scientists across Australia doing really interesting stuff in the food and ag sector. And a lot of it just doesn't see the light of day. It's really find it in academic papers, in journals, and that really most people don't get to read or can't really understand. So there's a real opportunity for those people to join up with other people, hustlers, as they say, in the startup space, people with more business acumen and the drive to commercialise technology And I see that as the real opportunity, always bringing it back to sustainability. And that's something that we really focus on at Rocket Seeder too, is, I guess, aligning the work that we do and that the work of the startups that we support with sustainable development goals.
You mentioned that there are a lot of things that are being done, a lot of innovative things that you're seeing. What are some of those things that you've seen that haven't really taken off yet due to whatever reason?
The issue is, or the exciting thing is the unknown, what's there that we don't know. And I say outside of universities and CSIRO, matching it up with sort of commercial opportunities and what investors may be interested in at the moment. There's a lot of interest globally in fermentation and cell-based technology in terms of looking at either traditional proteins or plant-based proteins, or actually cell-based proteins as well. So cell-based meat, dairy as well. So we're starting to see a bit of that in Australia. I just know that there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes and lots of, in fact, experts in that area in Australia. And the challenge is what's holding us back in commercialising that knowledge, if you like, is a combination of knowing about what's there and matching it up with opportunities, and also infrastructure that holds us back as well. For example, in the plant-based space, for example, pea protein, we export the raw product offshore currently because we don't have the machinery to process it. So we can use it in a food product and then we import it back into the country. So there are a few people now building factories, but I think, why did it take that long for us to invest in that and work that out? Very inefficient process. And we should be world leaders in this type of technology, in these supply chains, if you like. We should be actually exporting the final product rather than exporting the raw product. Importing is a little bit what we do with wool, same sort of concept.
It does make sense, being an agricultural economy, to be processing these things ourselves as these agricultural leaders in the world rather than just exporting things. But then there are other factors at play with technology and manufacturing that I guess do impede that. Without going down that road, I'd like to hear a little bit more about why you said that we're not scratching the surface even in Australia and in food tech. And I'm interested to know why you say that and what that's being compared to. Is it other industries that you're comparing that to, or is it other countries, or do you just believe that there's so much more that we can do to commercialize the research that we have?
Yeah, I co-founded another accelerator in Singapore a couple of years ago with two other Australians. And that is largely backed by the Singapore government. And it's been really successful and great for me personally because I get to play in the ecosystem in Singapore, but also we source our startups for our programs globally as well. I get to see what other people are doing in other countries, and you see how their innovation ecosystems work as well, because you're understanding why they're wanting to do a program in Singapore, and essentially that's to get into the Southeast Asian market in particular. And I guess that sort of opens my eyes to the opportunity and what other governments and I guess ecosystems are doing, and they're just far more supportive, and I'll just talk about Singapore in particular, far more supportive of people who want to start businesses, basically, new ventures. And so whether that's a university student or a postdoc or an academic or anyone really, they provide a decent amount of money to people with those ideas just to kickstart them. And then there's the whole, I guess, value chain, if you like, of financial opportunities, grants that they can access along the way as they scale. And another good thing about Singapore is a lot of the multinational food companies and agribusiness companies, their regional head office is located in Singapore. And there's a lot of funding around in Singapore and also in Hong Kong. So it's just a really good opportunity to do what I'm talking about in terms of commercialisation of food and agriculture technologies.
Is it a larger question around the actual support that Australians have for entrepreneurship? Is that really what you're saying there? It's not specific to food and ag tech?
Yeah, I think so. At the end of the day, just to keep it simple. For example, the federal government has just canned a really good program called the Incubator Support Fund, and that supported industry agnostic program, supported accelerators like ourselves to run programs throughout Australia, so not just state-based because it was federal funding. And so they've canned that, and it sort of limits the opportunity, particularly in regional areas, for entrepreneurs to get support. And often it's not just funding, it's really just getting the good advice, talking to other entrepreneurs, ones that are going through the same thing, also ones that have had the same experience and are willing to share that. And most of them are. So it's really, in our sort of industry speak, it's about developing the pipeline. And not everyone's going to continue with their business or be successful or whatever, but we need to create opportunities in all of our sectors, so not just food and agriculture, to give people the best chance of success. And we want to support and create more entrepreneurs and successful founders. So it's sort of a no-brainer to me, but government has lots of things on their plate at the moment. But I feel that we're going backwards in terms of in the innovation ecosystem, and that's not really a good thing. And that will hold us back in the long term as well.
What are you looking to at the moment to model these changes? Are you learning particular things or looking in certain places or from certain businesses or models or governments that have rolled out these sorts of programs and developed smaller entities? They could be subsidiaries, they could be other entrepreneurs. What are you looking to learn?
It's not so much learning, it's the change that we can help bring about. And if there's no direct government support there, then, we have to find other ways to do it. And one of the best ways that we can do that, we should be doing it anyway, is collaborating. And that's another thing that, having been in the food and ag sector for 25 years, we do struggle with quite a bit in Australia. I guess we're quite a geographically large country. There's the tall poppy syndrome, generational differences. I could go on and on.
I had a whole episode that we talked about tall poppy syndrome way back in the show. Yeah, it's something that has come up on the show before.
It is, and it applies to chefs and just anyone successful. It is a real thing in Australia, and I think that applies to what I'm talking about as well. I'm personally the opposite, and my fellow board members on Rocket Seed are very much the opposite. We're about supporting people so they can be successful, and when they are successful, even if it's just a small win, we like to celebrate that, and we all feel good about that. And that's a really big part of our program as well. We start each session with our cohorts and going around and talking about our wins, everyone's wins for the week, and focusing on the positive. Obviously, there are opportunities to talk about the not so good things, and we have one-on-one coaching sessions really for that, and also encourage cohort members to catch up privately as well, which they do. But it's really important to celebrate your wins, your success, and it just helps you move forward. And it's positive. It's anti-tall poppy, I guess, mindset. And I think we need more of that.
You've got a cohort around now. Is that right? They're about to start or they've just started? Is that right? They even finished?
Yeah, they've finished. Yeah, so they actually pitched, which is the end of a program. Although for Rocket Seed alumni, it really never finishes. But the actual program with each cohort finishes with the pitch night, and that happened back in February. So it was one of the first events in Melbourne.
Emma, you had a cohort come through quite recently as well. Could you tell me a little bit more about that, when it was wrapped up in about February from memory there, and what sort of businesses came through there, really changing things and innovating?
Yeah, so we ran a program at the end of last year. We were all Melbourne-based, all regional Victoria, but effectively most of us were in lockdown during the program. So it was a really strange experience for everyone. I think much appreciated. I was pleasantly surprised how well it went and how cohesive the cohort was. And we actually waited until February this year for them to pitch live and just to have that experience, because we feel that's really important to have that opportunity to pitch to a live audience rather than online, like most of the accelerator programs are doing at the moment, which is fine if it's a global program. But yeah, we felt that was really important. So we did that and it was really successful. And then a few of the cohort have actually done really well since, and they've been continuing to pitch any opportunity. Two of them actually pitched last night for a Startup Victoria pitch event, which had to be turned to online because of the recent COVID situation in Melbourne, and yeah, did really well, as they always do. One of them, Ho, the founder and CEO of a startup called the Leaf Protein Company. What she's focusing on is, I guess, the leaves in plants and plants that are native to particular countries. So they're generally very, I guess, drought proof. They don't need a lot of water to grow, but they're packed with, protein in particular and other nutrients. So she's focusing on those types of plants and then turning that into the product that can be used in food processing to boost the protein in our food. And then the other one is Altera Tech, and Liam pitched last night. And that's the piece of hardware that you put on the end of a spray boom with cropping and uses a lot less fertiliser than otherwise without that piece of equipment. So that's very much an ag tech startup, and Liam's just raised some funding, which is really exciting. And then the next stage for him is getting farmers to use his product. And then the rest is history, really. And also we had a really lovely mother and son team, Josh's Rainbow Eggs. So Josh started the business when he was 8 years old. He's now at university. And so his mother came on board as CEO along the way. And yeah, they run the business together, and just, a lovely, lovely family business. And they're actually obviously free range eggs. And what they're doing is looking at value adding and making egg-based snack products. And so they're healthy snacks, but an extension of what they do. And I guess it's really about diversification for them as a business.
If I didn't interview, I had Sunny Queen Farms on. If I didn't interview them, I wouldn't have known too much about eggs. It'd be interesting to hear more from their experience there. But 3 incredible businesses. I'm really interested to hear how things develop. So thank you for sharing those as well, Emma.
Yeah, no worries. I'm interested too.
I'd love to hear really what is it that is occupying your attention, that is something that you believe is causing friction that needs change? What's something that you're looking at that you're trying to change?
Yeah, I guess extending on what I was talking about before in finding or unearthing that technology within research organisations in Australia in ag tech and food tech. And yeah, so we're looking to move to a new building that the University of Melbourne has built called Melbourne Connect. And the whole idea of this building is built around for innovation and entrepreneurship and collaboration, which ticks all of our boxes. And we'll be working alongside and have direct or more direct access to researchers. So not only in Melbourne University, but other universities, keeping in mind that generally researchers in universities do their research in conjunction with researchers from other universities within Australia and overseas, and sometimes CSIRO and state governments also. So it's quite a linked up system, and I think this will be an opportunity for us to get a little bit closer so we can find out what's going on and then play our role in facilitating and matching up that science and the research that's being done with, I guess, whether it be entrepreneurs or investors, and really with the aim to commercialise that technology and play a role in that, and for the benefit of the economy. But also, a lot of these technologies are, improving the sustainability of the food system. And again, linking back to sustainable development goals in terms of our own goals, if you like, and being global goals, I think it all makes a lot of sense and sounds simple, but really not simple. And we just feel that's the way to go. That's the real opportunity for Rocket Seeder at the moment. So wish us luck.
Yeah, absolutely. Good luck on that. I would like to hear, you obviously see a lot of different businesses, a lot of different food businesses, whether they're innovating, they could be on the retail end all the way back to ag tech. So what is it that you believe is the most effective tool for success as a producer of food in some way, someone along the food supply chain?
Being open to other people's input. And that's what we, in our accelerator world, we call it coachability. And occasionally we have somebody in our program that doesn't really listen. And you sort of wonder why they're doing our program, because the idea is to get input from all different sorts of people at an early stage before they get too entrenched and go down one particular track, because often that's not the right way and leads to a lot of angst and wasted time and money. Yeah, so I guess being open, but at the same time having that skill not to listen to everybody. You can't take on everybody's advice, but really aiming to get a nice little group of advisors, if you like, around you to join you on your journey. I think that's really important. And collaboration too, in any form. Obviously, we're a big fan of that. And added to that, the global mindset. Whether you're running a local business and for the local market, I don't think it matters really. I think it's important to have a global mindset and be thinking in terms of how the impact that you're having on the global food system, if you like, even if it's a small act that you can do or a small impact, it's something and it all adds up. So even if you're not going to become a multi-million-dollar company scaling throughout the world, it doesn't really matter. I think it's about that mindset, and it has to be global and connected. And that's why we think that UN Sustainable Development Goals are really important, because they connect everyone around the world to these goals.
Emma, ultimately, what do you see the success of this business looking like, and the businesses that you work with? Is there something that you can articulate as a tangible goal for when the culture of supporting startups has changed?
There will be a point. We've supported over 80 founders over 3 years, nearly 4 years. And I guess the more founders that we can support and have them involved in our program and alumni, some of them are mentoring others, I think there'll be a point where we feel that we have made a difference at a particular level in the food system. And we're scaling ourselves, and we were quite restricted to working within Victoria because we were largely funded by the Victorian government previously. And just getting to work with founders in other parts of Australia, and also on specific issues like food waste and food loss, I think that's when we'll feel that we're really making a difference, and there'll be that sort of momentum will really kick in, if you like. And I think people will hopefully recognise and value the role that we're playing in the ecosystem.
Fantastic. I just have one last question for you on the show today, Emma, and that's, who would you like to hear on the show?
I'm not sure if you've interviewed Joost, who has the future food system at Fed Square at the moment.
I've not.
He is amazing and largely hospo, so I'd absolutely recommend him. And he has a setup at Fed Square at the moment, but he's only there for another month. And he's just amazing to listen to, really inspiring about sustainability, not just for the food system, but mostly the food system. So he works with a couple of chefs, Matt and Joe, and that's what he's been doing for many years. And yeah, definitely Joost. Also Alice Zaslewski, Alice in Frames. She did our program with her husband a couple of years ago and has just released a new book with vegetable recipes, or recipes using vegetables. And their business's phenomenon is around encouraging children to eat vegetables, which is pretty cool. She would be amazing to listen to.
Well, thank you very much for joining me on the program today, Emma. It's been a pleasure having you on and hearing more about the startup framework in Australia, and with the support that the government in Victoria and has now broadened further, and your experiences overseas in Singapore and beyond. So thank you for joining me today.
Great. Thanks a lot, James. Thanks for having me.
This program is hosted by James Henderson, with technical production by Jake Olver. Voiceovers were by Angus Brennan and Shim Phelan. Thanks to our distribution team, and a special thanks to you for tuning in every week. This program was produced by H Media. We'll see you soon.